What the did I just read? Hey everyone, Afrodo Reviews here, bringing you another book to decide. Is that worth reading of a second breakfast? Or does it deserve the fiery pits of Mount Doom? So let's decide. Radiopocalypse is a Sapphic post-apocalyptic novel written by Kalleigh, I think it's how it's pronounced, Kalleigh Gallagher, and published on March 9th of 2022. It's a self-published work on Amazon by an independent author. That's about all I can say when it comes to this book's background, it being a very recent release and not from a major publishing company or by a very well-known author. In fact, I purposely chose this book because of that, as I want to bring more attention to independent authors that are publishing their works on Amazon when I can. I know I have a very meager base for that, but it's worth, there's 100 of you. You guys must be looking for something interesting to read. Well, there's over 100 of you by the time I record this, but that's not the... But anyways, we'll ignore that rambling. Here's the report card. And now, on to the cover. Now, obviously, as you can see, I don't have a physical edition of the book. Instead, I bought the ebook edition on Amazon. Now, the cover is a bit minimalized, but I actually somewhat enjoy it. I like it because there's this nice contrast between the red and the gold on the cover. With the nice border around, you have the radio tower with that eye up there, and you have the small, brief thing up there that says, 2 girls, 1 radio show. The end of the world. Honestly, if I had one complaint about this cover, is that it does not prepare you in the slightest for what this book actually has in it. And I'll go more into that later, but that's the way the cover presents itself. It's just one of those, you would not be blamed for being so caught off guard by what this book does later. To go on with it, that's about all I can speak about. Being a Kindle edition, it doesn't have a back or anything else, so I'll just move on. Synopsis of this book, it seems simple when you first start the book, but that's kind of a false front. It really does not prepare you for what this book is actually about. But again, I will go into that later. So, for the ease of things, the back of the book, it effectively describes the story as this. About 19 years ago, a little over actually, the world came to an end. And the world has been an empty wasteland since. In that time, the only person that one of our main characters, Rachel, has had for company is the voice of the radio that's been picking up, named Loda. Now, Loda is a woman who seems to be running a radio broadcast show in the apocalypse, and again has been the only voice of comfort for Rachel in her years of loneliness since her parents have passed. So, one day, after finally getting in contact and confirming that Loda is a real person and not a recording that's been going, Rachel decides that she's going to do her best to literally cross oceans and countries to go meet up with Loda so the two of them can spend the rest of the apocalypse at least in each other's company, if anything else. Also, she might have the tiniest bit of crush on Loda. That's not important, and there's where I'm going to stop because everything else I need to discuss about this book needs to be in the review section. So, moving on to the review. Simply put, this book felt like it was extremely confused on just what it wanted to be. The synopsis of this book presents itself as it's going to be a journey sort of book as Rachel decides to cross the ocean and several miles of radioactive wasteland in an attempt to try and meet the voice on the other side of her radio, in the hopes that it will abate her loneliness. And at first, that's sort of what the story is going for. You get hints that there are mutant creatures out there. Loda and Rachel both mention how they have to wear extreme radioactive gear just to go outside without getting poisoned. And there's a lot... It seems like it's going to go with that idea for a bit. Now, obviously, that's an interesting premise. You can have Loda fighting these mutants. You can have her dealing with supply issues. You can have her dealing with the new landscapes and the new weather issues that can happen at the end of the world. there's a lot of promise on just what it can be, all with the overwhelming theme of loneliness and what we would do in the case to prevent that. But as the book goes, the more confused the plot and the world kind of get. At one point, the story introduces a group of giants that live within the wasteland that are fighting each other. The reason why is never stated. And the giants are capable of creating weapons out of light to fight each other with. And the way they're described and the effect they have on Rachel's mind draw some very heavy comparisons, at least in my mind, to what sounds like it's supposed to be a battle between a biblically accurate angel versus a devil. There's also an evil storm monster that traps Rachel in a town and gas station for several days. And at first you're kind of thinking, okay, that's a little too magical for my liking, because this is a post-apocalyptic world, and the giants at least they got a very small showcasing of that. But no, with the storm creature, it's focused on for several pages. It seems to hunt Rachel anytime she's out after dark, only to reveal, oh no, it's not really evil. It's just the soul of a woman. I think, again, it didn't really answer this question, but the soul of a woman who was trying to get Rachel to go into her old house and burn it down, and that's all she wanted. Which conflicts with a lot of the storm monster's actions earlier on, where it literally was kind of popping her eardrums with this terrifying screech, and it's just... Oh, and then there's the whole story about how Loda starts having prophetic dreams, which lead her to a cave where a giant eye stares at her, puts her in a dreamscape where she wanders this black, inky abyss filled with, like, sludge-like liquid throughout it, where she eventually confronts one of the giants earlier, that I think calls her out for not moving on from the death of her parents, and then touches her head, rewires her mind, and that's where the story ends. No, I can't tell you what happened from there. I don't know if that was trying to say something. I don't know if it was really happening or Loda just thinks it was happening. There's no explanation because it clear. Okay, so like I could buy that this is just Loda's way of, mentally dealing with her parents' loss, but she did actually have a prophetic dream which led her to this cave. Like, they found the exact cave she dreamt about, and it's not a case of, oh, well, she must have just seen that on one of her drives or anything. No. She barely leaves her bunker until she starts searching for Rachel, and by then she's already having these weird dreams. So it's just one of those... What? So you can see what I mean. None of these plots sound like they'd even be in the same genre, let alone the same book. And each time one of these plots crop up and you read them, you're just sort of left there, like, reading and thinking,
alright then, I don't know what the fuck just happened.
And they might have worked together if any of these plots were actually relevant to the story being had. If they had something to say on loneliness, if they had something to say about, risking it all on a hope, or something like that. But these plots just kind of crop up for no reason. Like, at first I thought there was going to be this, like, the storm plot. This is kind of spoilery. The whole thing's been kind of spoilery, so I'm sorry about that. But the storm creature plot, I would have understood it trapping Rachel there if maybe that was the catalyst of Rachel eventually coming to terms with the fact that she has actual feelings for Loda, because the house that the creature wants her to burn down was the home of a former gay couple who had a kid and lost each other in the apocalypse. And Rachel goes through it, finds out their life story and all that. And this at least I think would have had some relevance to the plot if maybe this was Rachel picking this up, reading through it, and then coming to the conclusion, oh, I have a crush on Loda, or I'm in love with Loda. But no, there's never really that revelation. Both characters already know that the lesbians, and they both know that they kind of just say, I'm kind of attracted to you. Yeah, I'm attracted to you too. Let's be in a relationship. Cool. That's kind of how the relationship starts, if I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, these plots would be forgivable in a sort of surrealist sense if they were relevant to the main plot or the main theme. But neither were really relevant in that regard. It just sort of feels like things in this book happen for the sake of happening. Like, the author's afraid she's gonna lose your attention, so she plays some B-roll real quick to bring your attention back up, or like jingles keys, or does this scene because, I added this element to it earlier, but I don't want the element in it anymore, so I need to get rid of it. A perfect example of that one is when Rachel is trapped in that town, she picks up an amorphous blob-like creature named Victor. Now the amorphous blob-like creature it's sort of portrayed, I guess in a sense, I thought of him like an octopus. Not completely sapient, but sentient enough that he has a curiosity, and he bonds with Rachel as sort of like a pet. And it works very well with Rachel because he works as a sort of living alarm system. Anytime there's a dangerous creature approaching them, he just starts screaming this high-pitched whine. So yeah, obviously, there's some potential there. But out of nowhere, when Rachel's traveling and she stops, Victor leaps off her back, goes into a cave where a predator is there, and then starts screaming at it and gets eaten. And at least that's how I read that scene. And it's just one of those, why did that happen? Based on the fact that it just feels like that scene happened because the author wanted to get rid of Victor. And again, that would have made sense if it furthered that theme of loneliness. Maybe Victor's death dropped Rachel deep into the loneliness, or furthered her drive to find Loda because of how dangerous this world is, and the one friend she's made in the 19 years she's been alive just got eaten alive by a mutated wolf thing. But again, I honestly, apart from one mention later, Victor doesn't really ever come up again. And the same can be true of the mutated spider monster Jeremy, or the giants. It's just all of these things feel like they happen to happen. They don't feel like they're connected in any way. And as I think about this, there's even more issues I sort of realized were with the book. For example, despite the entire story hinging on the relationship between these two characters, I don't think they're very well characterized. Apart from some very basic traits you could really give anyone, I don't think I could tell you much about either character. Rachel is a plant-growing woman who enjoys drawing, and that's kind of all I can... Apparently she says everything in a sarcastic tone, but none of her dialogue really comes off in that way. And Loda's a talkative woman who talks too much when she's nervous, and is good with engineering and science. And again, I don't think this wouldn't be too bad, but these are literally our only two human characters and the two main characters that it focuses on the entire time. So you would think there's at least a little more characterization that would be needed to make us more, connected to these characters, more add the tension, make us want to see them together even more, but it doesn't. And this really disappoints me because reading through this book, there's clear signs that this author has a lot of talent, and is a great author, but it's just sort of, there are things I do like about this book as much as I've complained. And there's for example, I love the framing device. Well, not necessarily the framing device. I like how she does both characters' point of view. This book is told through the first person point of view. That is, we see the events happening through Rachel's eyes in the first person. However, we also see things happen through Loda's eyes, but these are framed specifically in radio broadcasts that she does. The only time we see through Loda's perspective is when she does radio broadcasts. And that's a very good idea. It's a good way to not only to keep Loda and Rachel connected as part of the world, but also keeps Loda with an air of mystery behind her, while also showcasing how Rachel can perceive her. And while some of the radio broadcasts also have that issue where it just feels like some of them are there to be there, these could have been very good characterizations for our main characters. Or it's just, there's a lot here. There's clearly the makings of a great author in this book. It's just, I don't think this book showcases their abilities the best. And I thought this was actually a debut novel at first until I looked it up. So all in all, I would have to say this book's about a 5 out of 10. Yeah, it's not a great book, all things considered. Like I said, there's clearly the makings of a great author in here. It's just, I think part of the issue, what went wrong with this book, is the author was afraid that her main concept wasn't strong enough to hold the story by itself. That the audience wouldn't be satisfied with just the story of Rachel and Loda trying to get together, so she had to put extra stuff in there to keep you interested. But all that really does is confuse me more, and the stuff doesn't really connect to the plot line. So not only is it confusing about what's exactly happening, but it also just feels like a pointless distraction in all things at the end of the day. A bit of advice is, when you write a side story, you want it to connect to the main story or the main theme of the story at the very least. You don't want to just have a side story to have a side story. Don't wait, otherwise it's going to feel like wasted time. So the question arises, does this book deserve Mount Doom? Now, again, to repeat myself, this is the work of an independent self-published author. And there are clearly good ideas and executions of some of these ideas here that show that she has clear talent. So I do believe that there is a reason to pick up this book and try to read it. Heck, maybe it won't confuse you as much and you'll love this book. If you're looking for a sapphic romance that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, I would highly recommend this. But I would say go into it as a sort of surrealistic apocalypse novel more than anything. There were many things that I feel she could have improved on in this book. However, despite that, there is still a solid foundation, and I honestly want to see Gallagher continue to write because I think she could pump out an amazing novel in the future. So that's how I recommend this book. But with that being said, just remember, with every book comes an adventure, and every adventure is worth having, even the bad ones.